This moment of turbulence, when we most need a strong United Nations, the organization faces its deepest crisis in credibility and capacity. Funding cuts have paralyzed its operations.
For decades, Africa struggled for recognition in global decision-making. The continent has often left out of critical international process, carrying the burden of climate change, debt, and conflict, yet with a limited influence.
I'm submitting to us that this is important because it demonstrates that there is something in our minds that we have yet to liberate ourselves. We have yet to decolonize our mind, which Ngugi wa Thiong'o says is the prerequisite to our total liberation, so that we can engage with the world meaningfully.
Yesterday at the United Nations General Assembly in New York, Kenya's President Dr. William RUTO addressed this long-standing imbalance. He positioned himself as the strong voice of Africa, calling for fairness, inclusivity, and accountability in the global order.
Casts a long shadow to date. Not to put too fine a point to it, the failure of multilateralism during crisis, which relegate the people of Africa outside the cycle of moral consideration and normalizes humanitarian neglect and other casual injustices, are failures of humanity. Nothing about Africa, and I say nothing about Africa or its people, makes it acceptable for this type of failure to persist in this era.
In his speech, President RUTO demanded permanent African representation at the United Nations Security Council. He urged that no institution can remain credible while excluding more than 1.4 billion people from its most important decision. He further criticized the global financial system that continue to disadvantage African nations. According to RUTO, the current structure traps relegate countries in the cycle of debt while rewarding wealthier nations.
We have insisted that the reform of the UN is no longer about if, but it is when, and that when is now. Because unless and until we reform the UN, it will continue to remain undemocratic, unrepresentative, and not fit for purpose. And it is the reason why, as we come to this UN at the 8th year, we must also be very careful about what the future looks like and how the UN we have to reform the UN Security Council. Africa and our 1.4 billion people must have voice, must be represented. We must reform the international financial architecture so that it represents more. It becomes more representative. We have greater voice, we have greater say, we have greater representation, so that we can deal with the challenges of the world in a manner that respects the views and perspectives of everybody.
To illustrate African active role, President RUTO pointed to Kenya's leadership in international peace mission, including the ongoing support mission in Haiti. He stressed that Africa is already contributing solutions, even with limited resources.
The gangs, in my very honest opinion, are cowards with very minimal intervention. They have literally gone into hiding, occasionally showing up. It's a guerrilla warfare of some sort. And therefore, I thought I would use this meeting to bring to the attention of the international community that the situation in Haiti can and must be solved.
However, the path forwarded is not without challenges. Africa continues to face corruption, weak institutions, climate shocks, and unfair global trading system.
And later on, as we worked to govern and manage our relations with other countries, the lesson here was that there will always be challenges along the way. What matters is to find ways to confront them head on and to continually make progress. Many of you will be putting your MBA to use on a continent that is better off than it has ever been.
He said that we must unite and come out of that arrangement with one army, with one currency, with one united country, because the former colonial powers had yet devised another method of controlling African, and he said that that thing which we later examined and recognized as neocolonialism was alive and well. And he said, if we did not do so, Africa will never realize our potential. That is the Africa about which you want me to reminisce in order for me to determine what was the vision of the founding fathers. Their vision was a united Africa. Their vision was an Africa that was united in our diversity. Their vision was an Africa that would tell her story. Their vision was an Africa that would exploit our resources for our benefit. Their vision was an Africa that would sit at the dinner table of human civilization, not as food to be consumed or as a waiter, but as a diner to enjoy the goodies of life. That was their vision.
President Ruto acknowledged these realities, but emphasized that the reforms must begin both internationally and domestically, strengthening African institutions, building unity, and ensuring that the leadership delivers for the people.
Multilateralism during crisis, which relegate the people of Africa outside the cycle of moral consideration and normalizes humanitarian neglect and other casual injustices, are failures of humanity. Nothing about Africa, and I say nothing about Africa or its people, makes it acceptable for this type of failure to persist.
President Ruto's speech at the United Nations General Assembly has been described as one of his strongest global addresses yet. By speaking firmly on behalf of Africa, he challenged the world powers to listen and urged African leaders to rise to the task of leading with justice and responsibilities.
Over the past 2 decades, guided by the Ezowini Consensus and SAD Declaration, the C10 has been the custodian of Africa's demand. We have carried Africa's voice to every region, every forum, and every negotiation. Our greatest achievement has been our unity. Despite our diversity, Africa has remained steadfastly aligned behind a single, principled position. That unity is our strength. No reform can succeed without a united Africa. Through tireless advocacy, Africa has secured recognition of its case as both a priority and a special case.
The message was clear. Africa is demanding respect, inclusivity, and fairness. The question now is whether the world will respond and whether African leaders will match the call for inclusivity, equity, and accountability.
And in one voice, we must uphold this position with unwavering clarity. Excellencies, Africa carries a disproportionate share of the Security Council's agenda and is among the largest contributors of the UN peacekeeping. Yet we remain the only continent without permanent representation. This historic injustice must come to an end sooner rather than later. Beyond asserting our right, we must be clear about what we seek and how to achieve it. Securing Africa's rightful seats is our common demand. But we must also be prepared to shoulder the responsibilities that come with permanent membership, including how we will choose our representatives.
Reporting for Love Podcast, my name is Daniel Kihoro.